Finding affordable accommodation is a problem faced by most university students studying away from home. Last year, the situation was compounded in Newcastle by the earthquake, which destroyed many of the cheap rental houses. But according to the Student Representative Council, that's only part of the reason students here are more disadvantaged than most. The university provides around 485 on-campus beds. The SRC says that's way below the number offered at other universities in the state. In Wollongong, 10.5% of the uni population can be accommodated on campus. At Sydney, 7.8%. Closer to the Newcastle figure, Macquarie Uni caters to just 4.7%. In Newcastle, 2.8% of students can live in.
That's a problem that the university should look at if they're accepting students into the university. Well, they should be providing places.
After the quake, the university's insurance company set up a temporary village to alleviate immediate housing problems, and the shanty town became home to 200 students. But in a few weeks, it will be dismantled.
The original arrangement was for it to last only for 12 months, and City Council gave its approval on the assumption that it would be a very, very short-term venture and not turned into something more permanent.
The students themselves are at a loss to work out why, in such a time of acute need, the village can't be retained. According to the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Keith Morgan, the setup is too expensive and money would better be spent on permanent facilities. 95 new rooms are currently under construction, but only 35 will be completed at the start of next semester. By the end of 1991, there'll be around 580 places for the 7,000 students expected to be searching for accommodation next year.
Marvellous March in Newcastle, an autumn carnival and a chance to forget the traumas of the earthquake. On the 6th, the first of the big races, and a fun crowd was on hand to see the bullfighter win the Penfolds Classic. Under a grey sky 24 hours later, and there was plenty of money invested on the runners in the $150,000 Newmarket handicap, and that little Kiwi genius Jim Cassidy was at his best. A racing season in Australia wouldn't be the same if everyone's favourite racehorse Vo Rogue didn't win a race. With many runners that would figure in the Melbourne Cup in November, the Vo ran them off their feet in the Honda Australian Cup on the 12th of March. To Rosehill on the 31st of March, two of the glamour races on the Australian calendar, the BMW International and the Golden Slipper Stakes. In what was to be the beginning of a memorable year for Mick Dittman and Citizen, the BMW was a snack. The premier two-year-old race in the country, the Golden Slipper, saw a successful raid from south of the border. Gosford is one of the most progressive racing centres north of Sydney, and the hard-working committee were rewarded with a fabulous Cup Carnival in May. A big crowd was on hand for the running of the $200,000 FAI Gosford Cup, and Ray Warren called the closing stages of a super race. Despite their fair share of drama during the season, the Newcastle Jockey Club conducted a brilliant spring carnival during September. Tuesday the 11th, and a friendly atmosphere descended on Broadmeadow for the $100,000 NBN Cameron handicap, and it was a cavalier performance by the winner. Sensation after the running of the NBN Cameron as a protest second against first was fired in, but after a short deliberation the placing stood. The second day in the feature event was the $250,000 Winfield Newcastle Gold Cup. Could we find a Melbourne Cup winner here, as we did with Hyperno and Gurners Lane? In the spring, all things point to a city of beauty and sporting fanaticism. Caulfield Cup Day, October the 20th. Enter Mick Dittman and Siddiston. To Moonee Valley a week later, and all the rage was young trainer David Hayes and his Adelaide aristocrat Better Loosen Up. To cap off an amazing year, the race that a nation stops for, the Foster's Melbourne Cup. Newcastle celebrated as only it can, with copious quantities of ale and champagne. The TABs ticked from 7:30am, everyone had their own ideas on winners, and JB Cummings was out to improve his tremendous cup record.
Civic Park gained the appearance of a garbage dump as Newcastle residents took advantage of Waste Busters Day to bring out their recyclable rubbish. Tins went in one pile, plastic in another, paper products in a third, and glass in a final category. The Friends of the Earth initiative found supporters in Newcastle's Greens and the Wilderness Society who eagerly endorsed the waste minimisation message. Lord Mayor John McNaughton was presented with a petition containing about 1,800 signatures calling for regular door-to-door collection of recyclable products in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie.
People have been unhappy with what's happening and they want a much more efficient system in the future.
Thanks very much. I'm very pleased to accept this petition. And I can tell you that Council has this under review, will consider it very carefully.
The rubbish was collected by local waste disposal companies and the park resumed its arboreal appearance, but not before a theatrical troupe entertained the gathering, highlighting the importance to the environment of the recycling message.
With the swell dropping to just 1 metre, the first round of the BHP Steel International was always going to be an anticlimax, but few would have predicted such a dire day for the Novocastrians. Craig McMillan took advantage of the clean early conditions and traded critical moves with Cronulla's Richard Marsh. Marsh surged ahead with a clean tube ride, then sealed the heat with a radical floater. Avoca's Shane Powell also found the tube, but his opponent Stuart Bedford-Brown more than answered the challenge with two of his own that sent the Central Coaster packing. A southerly change made a mess of the surf for Luke Egan's clash with Glenn Pringle, and it was a case of whoever caught the few decent waves on offer would win the heat. Unfortunately for Luke, it was the Cronulla boy who rode to victory with the help of the Egan family.
I get Luke's father to make my boards, Sam, and well, we've worked closely together probably for 4 or 5 years now, and I used to always be envious of thinking Luke's boards are a lot better than mine, and maybe thinking that he might shape him a better one because I'm now in competition with him.
The carnage continued when Simon Law took on Sean Munro. Some untimely wipeouts cost the Law dearly, and Munro hammered home the advantage with the day's most radical display. Terrigal's Ross Clark-Jones was another to find the waves necessary for a morale-boosting win.
I just want to get through a few heats before I hit Hawaii to get the confidence up.
Merryweather's Matt Hoy had the hometown crowd hooting with a great start to his duel with Flavio Patarats. He threw caution to the wind in a bid to seal the heat, but a last-minute wave saw the Brazilian snatch victory. That left Dave MacArthur to take on the awesome Tommy Curran, and although he turned in a bold performance, the American simply had too much class. Martin McMillan gave the locals something to cheer about in the Malibu trials, but even he couldn't erase the memories of a bleak day. So all hopes for a hometown victory now rest solely on the shoulders of Nicky Wood. He'll take on Norah Head's Glenn Winton in round 2 of the BHP Steel International tomorrow. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
The committee has been travelling around the state for the last 2 years listening to concerns of the elderly. A major problem which has emerged is that of discrimination.
People in their 40s, 50s can't get jobs once they get out of work. The problem of early redundancy and retirement when people don't want to retire.
But there should, in the longer term and not too distant future, I think the age should become a grounds for discrimination.
That's not the only issue confronting the region's aged. The earthquake has compounded many housing and health problems.
We've heard some complaints about the way insurance companies have been treating older people and not making it, let's say, too easy to have their claims processed rapidly.
The committee, made up of 12 independent representatives, has the power to put recommendations to the Premier and ministers concerned. For the elderly, this has been long overdue.
I think they need to hear from the people themselves what they want. You can't have people in power just saying old people have to want this or that, you know. I think they should ask the people themselves, and that's just what they're doing.
While chairman of the committee, David Chesterman, was unwilling to speculate on any changes which could occur as a result of the committee's recommendations, he did say that the government is becoming increasingly aware of the political muscle being exercised by this group of people.
And I think that what with the rising cost of healthcare and the increasing number of aged in the community, that politicians are sitting up and beginning to listen.
Water sports and tennis dominated January. Guy Andrews ran second to the Enigma Guy Leach in the Adelaide leg of the Uncle Toby's Ironman series and was to establish himself as a champion of the future. The World Windsurfer Championships were hosted by the Belmont Skiff Club, and amid controversy and lack of substantial breezes at stages, good performances by the locals. On the harbour, Formula One powerboat racing arrived, and it was the Aussie champ Craig Bailey who grabbed the win. And Craig Bailey will win the inaugural Newcastle Formula One Grand Prix. Still on the water, and it was the defending champion who was successful in the St George NBN Sports Star of the Year award. Motordrome action, and David Hopping got it all wrong but survived to race another day. Englishman Ricky Willison shot a 7 under par 4-round total of 281 to win the Lake Macquarie Amateur Golf title, while 4 of the top tennis players in the world battled out the Roach Racket Resort Classic. Van Rensburg beat Lendl. Lendl beat Carluve Steeb. And in the final, it was Van Rensburg just hanging on to defeat a gallant and flamboyant Mikael Pernfors. In Melbourne, Newcastle's favourite tennis player Rachel McQuillan was in devastating form. Here a third-round win over Canadian Helen Khaleesi. But in the quarterfinals, Bulgarian Katerina Malieva just a bit too strong. To February, and Guy Waters retained his Commonwealth light heavyweight crown against Victor Davis. Motorbike action at Cameron Park in a tribute to one of the greatest contributors to the sport, Rod Allen. Brian Judd announced his resignation as the general manager of the Newcastle Knights. In another league, Shock Maitland succumbed to a lack of numbers and dropped out of the Newcastle Rugby League competition for 1990. 97 boats lined up for the Poolbar Island ski race, and after 3 hectic laps it was Network 40-odd seconds in front of Top Gun. At Raymond Terrace, Auski proved as popular as ever. March opened with Craig Peavy floored by Renato Cornett. Footy arrived with the Knights spanking North Sydney. Peter Doohan ran amok and stole the Australian Satellite Tournament at District Park. The Moscow Torpedoes did just that to northern New South Wales. St George and Adelaide City played an NSL match at Austral Park, and adventurous swimmers took on the daunting prospect of swimming across the Lake Macquarie. In April, the Falcons opened with a loss to Eastside, but bounced back with a thriller against the Cannons. It was to be the only win for a while as the Falcons suffered heavy losses to Adelaide and Perth. And then they were involved in an ugly incident at the end of the North Melbourne game. Bike riders from all over the country competed in the national endurance ride around Cessnock over 4 days. Junior golfers showed how it was done in the Jack Newton Classic in the same town. Karate whiz kids turned it on at the basketball stadium. And Ivan Lendl returned to Roach Racker Resort for a tune-up against the Legends for Wimbledon. Rod Sodaro won the Ultra Triathlon at Foster, and Australs grabbed a couple of wins in one of many 1990 tournaments. To Rugby League, and Riverina led by Les Boyd were too good for Newcastle. The Knights continued to impress against Western Suburbs. But then the wheels fell off, firstly against the Eels. And then Wally and the boys went point scoring. In a short while, a look at our second quarter. Let's take a look at the next 4 months of 1990, and the Falcons' tale of woe continued. Further losses to Melbourne and Illawarra. Golf took to new territory, and here was a chance to purposely hit your shot into the drink. A new set-up at Hungerford Hill, an aqua driving range. More motorsport or just a bit of mudslinging. Anyway, they looked as though they were having some fun. And talk about your tail being on the ground, you can't get much closer to terra firma than the go-kart boys at Cameron Park in May. Finally, the tide turned for the Knights when they thumped St George. While the Knights were belting the Dragons, one with a bit of fire belted Scott Carter, and it was a liquid diet for some weeks. Down to our sister Still City, and the Knights were the ones with lead in their pencils. It was a happy time for the Blue and Reds in June. The SG ball team won the grand final against Manly, and won't some of these kids be champions? The Raiders just got up in a close one in Canberra. The Knights gave the Sharks the bite. Ashley Flash Gordon saved the Knights against the Roosters. And Stevie Fulmer skipped away to blitz the Gold Coast. It was fairy tale stuff as into July the winds kept coming. Now for the Bears a second time. And the sweetest victory of them all, Manly. To Arana Park and another flogging for the Magpies. But Penrith in August halted the run. to the final match of the minor round, and we needed to beat the Tigers at home to force a playoff. "48 hours later, another unbelievable match, but this time it was a sad but dignified end to a marvellous season.
It was a great game and I'm very proud of them. I think the City of Newcastle can be very proud of their football team.
Still in this quarter, a Merriweather Surfboard Riders Club thrashed Avoca to continue their domination of club surfing. BHP Australs were stunning in a 4-0 whitewash of Sydney Macedonia to hang on to a chance in the State League. Bodybuilders beefed up at the Belmont 16-foot Sailing Club in the Hunter Valley Championships. The Aquatech Rubber Ducky series got underway at Catherine Hill Bay in sedate waters. Peter Brett and Joy Terry won their respective divisions of the Lake Macquarie Half Marathon, and Phil Williams was voted the Newcastle Rugby League Player of the Year. And what an ending to the NRL season, the kids from Waratah Mayfield up in a thriller. To netball, and cricketers' arms avenged their semi-final defeat by West Novos to win the A-grade grand final, but while certain teams were winning, the poor old Falcons were copping a hiding at each outing. The Gold Coast got on top. Then the Sydney Kings. North Melbourne and Canberra inflicted further losses, but then the turning point, a great performance against the Bullets. And finally it clicked. The Falcons thumped Adelaide and it seemed a brand new team. More to come in NBN's look at 1990.
The youth was taken to Belmont Police Station where he remained in custody until detectives from Manly arrived at about 8 a.m. to interview him in detail about 2 shootings in Sydney's northern suburbs last night. The bodies of 37-year-old Barbara May Malloy and 16-month-old daughter Rebecca were discovered at 9:30 last night by the woman's 15-year-old daughter. Neighbours alerted police when they heard the distressed girl's cries for help. Both victims had been shot in the head with a .22 rifle as they lay in bed. It's believed they'd been dead for some hours. A night-long manhunt concluded when police went to the Pacific Highway near Nord's Wharf. Police found the youth wandering along the Pacific Highway at about 6:30 following a tip-off from passing motorists who recognised the youth's abandoned vehicle from radio reports earlier in the morning. A car found on the same stretch of road was taken to Belmont Police Station for forensic testing. It's understood the vehicle had run out of petrol. Detectives confirmed they were interviewing the youth in connection with the killings. Shortly later, he was charged with 2 counts of murder. Just before midday, the 16-year-old, his head covered by a blanket, was led by police into a closed session of Belmont Children's Court. The hearing lasted just a few minutes. Later, police would only give brief details.
A youth has been arrested. He's appeared at court and he will appear at Glebe Coroner's Court in relation to the deaths in Sydney.
Police could give no reason why the teenager was heading north. They say their inquiries in the Belmont region have now concluded. The youth will remain in custody to reappear at Glebe Court on Monday. Tom Hilston, NBN News.